It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago when tension spread across the 15th floor of Lincoln and Foster Investments. The office was in full panic mode. A group of tech executives from Austin had shown up nearly an hour early for a multi-million-dollar meeting, and the translator they had hired was stuck in traffic on I-90 with no cell signal. Matthew Lincoln, co-founder of the firm, paced the floor with a growing sense of dread. The meeting was critical. The Austin-based company, Gulfstream Systems, was considering a major acquisition of a Chicago startup that Lincoln and Foster had just brought into their portfolio. The deal could exceed $40 million. Every detail had been rehearsed: slides, financial projections, opening remarks, even catered coffee from a local roastery. But now, without the interpreter, things were spiraling out of control. Matthew was in his early 40s, sharp suit, perfectly combed hair, but now beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. Staff members scrambled to download apps, clumsily trying to translate phrases with AI tools, but nothing worked. Frustration filled the room. On the far side of the office, a woman quietly pushed a cleaning cart down the hallway. Her name was Rosa Delgado. She was 52, with warm brown skin, tied-back hair, and a pair of worn sneakers that had seen years of walking. She had been cleaning this office for nearly 6 years, mostly invisible to those who worked there. People greeted her politely on good days, or not at all. Rosa was born in El Paso, but moved to Chicago with her family when her husband passed away. She had 2 grown sons, both working, and a granddaughter who meant the world to her. She never complained. She showed up every evening, did her job quietly, and left before anyone really noticed. But that day, something was different. She saw the flurry of people near the conference room and heard a few rushed phrases in a thick Southern accent. Something clicked. She pushed her cart to the side, peeked through the glass wall, and cleared her throat. "Excuse me. I speak Texan. Maybe I can help?" Everyone turned. The room fell silent. Matthew raised his eyebrows. "I'm sorry?" "I'm originally from Texas. I used to work in freight logistics in Houston. I can understand what they're saying. I can translate, at least until your interpreter arrives." One of the men at the table, Carlos Ramirez, VP of Strategy at Gulfstream, smiled faintly and spoke a line in his smooth Southern drawl. Rosa responded with ease. The others exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. Matthew hesitated for a moment, then motioned her in. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She removed her gloves gently, placed them on the cart, and stepped inside. The atmosphere was tense, but Rosa kept her composure. She sat at the corner of the table, hands folded, and waited for the presentation to begin. Matthew looked at her once more, then launched into his opening remarks. His voice was shaky at first, but as Rosa translated his words with calm clarity, confidence returned. She didn't just translate, she adapted. She softened jargon, clarified complex terms, and even added context when needed. When Matthew made a quiet joke, Rosa rephrased it with local flair, making the room chuckle. The meeting transformed. The executives leaned forward, engaged and attentive. Questions flowed back and forth. Rosa kept pace, never stumbling. She was precise, thoughtful, and most of all, authentic. The woman who had spent years wiping fingerprints off the same glass doors now stood as the key to one of the firm's most important negotiations. Matthew watched her in disbelief. He had walked past her countless times. He had seen her mop the floors, clean the windows, but he had never truly seen her. Until now. By the time the presentation ended, the energy in the room had shifted. Carlos Ramirez extended his hand to Rosa and thanked her personally. One by one, the other executives did the same. Rosa blushed slightly, but remained graceful. Matthew stood quietly at the edge of the room, hands in his pockets, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The deal wasn't only salvaged, it had gained momentum. And none of it would have happened without Rosa Delgado. As the visitors left and the door closed behind them, Matthew turned to Rosa. "That was incredible. I just helped where I could, sir." "No, You did a lot more than that. Rosa smiled gently. Sometimes the right words at the right time can change everything. She glanced at her cart, still sitting quietly near the door. Then, without another word, she put her gloves back on and walked out, just as quietly as she had come in. In the days that followed, word of what happened in that meeting spread fast. The janitor who saved the deal. Some spoke of Rosa Delgado with awe, others with disbelief, and a few with quiet resentment. In a place where everyone had a title and a LinkedIn profile, someone like her stepping up didn't sit right with everyone. But Matthew Lincoln couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed something all along. He remembered how Rosa had handled herself. Calm, articulate, completely unshaken. She had read the room better than most trained professionals. And not only had she translated words, she had conveyed culture, intent, and meaning. It had been nothing short of remarkable. By Thursday morning, he called her into his office. Rosa came in wearing her usual navy blue uniform, hair pulled back, hands clasped in front of her. She looked nervous, but composed. "Please have a seat, Rosa." She sat carefully on the edge of the chair. "What you did the other day was extraordinary. You didn't just help. You saved a partnership we spent months building. And you did it with more poise than many executives I've worked with." Rosa lowered her gaze, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "I only did what felt right, Mr. Lincoln. And you did it brilliantly, which is why I wanted to talk about a new role, something more permanent." She looked up, surprised. "I don't have a college degree. I studied 2 years of business admin back in Houston, but I dropped out when my youngest got sick. Since then, it's been just work and family. I can't afford to take risks." Matthew nodded. "I understand. But this wouldn't be a risk. It would be a formal position, stable salary, benefits. You'd help with international communications, client relations. With time, maybe more." Rosa sat in silence. A part of her wanted to believe him, but years of struggle had taught her to be cautious. Promises didn't pay rent. "I have bills, Mr. Lincoln. My son and granddaughter live with me. I can't walk away from steady income." "You wouldn't be walking away. You'd be stepping up with full security." She studied his expression. He looked sincere. "Are you serious?" 100%. Rosa blinked slowly, then nodded. "Okay, I'll try." The next day, Rosa arrived in plain black slacks and a white blouse. The cleaning cart was gone. Instead, she was greeted by Michelle from HR, who handed her a badge and showed her to a modest workstation near the project managers. Some employees smiled, others whispered. One intern muttered, "Guess anyone can be in leadership now." Rosa heard it. She didn't react. She dove into her work with the same determination she had always shown. At first, she handled small tasks, translating emails, reviewing outreach drafts, but her insight was sharp. She reworded documents to be more culturally sensitive, corrected assumptions others had missed, and made clients feel seen. In just a few weeks, she'd earned the trust of the international team. When Matthew traveled to meet with Gulfstream in Austin, he brought Rosa along. She was nervous, first time flying in 20 years. But when they arrived at the dinner meeting, Rosa stepped into the restaurant in a simple dress and soft heels, armed with a notepad and sharp mind. She was quiet at first, letting Matthew lead. But when Carlos Ramirez brought up a key section of the proposal, Rosa clarified the language, adding context others had missed. The room fell into a natural rhythm. Jokes were shared. Trust was built. After the dinner, Carlos pulled Rosa aside. "You've got a gift, Rosa. Most people talk too much. You listen, and that makes all the difference." Back in Chicago, things began to shift. Rosa was no longer just accepted, she was respected, but not everyone was happy about it. Some middle managers began to question her involvement. There were rumors, quiet complaints. One anonymous message to HR accused her of stepping beyond her role. Rosa was called into a formal review. "We've received a concern," said the HR manager carefully, "questioning the scope of your contributions." Matthew was there. He listened quietly, then stood. Rosa's work speaks for itself. She's not overstepping. She's filling gaps we didn't even know we had. This conversation ends here. The complaint was dismissed, but for Rosa, something inside her trembled. She went home that night questioning everything. Sitting on her small couch with her granddaughter asleep in the next room, she asked herself, "Do I really belong here?" The answer didn't come that night, but something was already forming. A quiet resolve. Because deep down, Rosa knew she wasn't done yet, not even close. The following month, Rosa was invited to join an industry summit in New York City. Lincoln and Foster would present their recent partnership successes, and Matthew wanted Rosa there, not in the background, but at the table. It would be her first time presenting in a formal setting. She prepared meticulously, nights spent reading, practicing phrases, studying trade terms. She even borrowed a blazer from her neighbor. When the day came, she stood before a small crowd of investors and executives from across the country. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. She spoke clearly, translating and explaining the firm's global outreach efforts. She didn't oversell. She didn't try to impress. She simply told the truth, and that was enough. After the event, several attendees approached her. One from a tech firm in Seattle said, "You're exactly the kind of perspective this industry needs." But back in Chicago, the wind shifted. While Rosa's presence was being praised externally, inside the office, tension grew. An email thread among some mid-level managers questioned her lack of credentials. A few claimed she was getting special treatment. One executive, Thomas Green, started excluding her from key meetings without explanation. Rosa tried to stay focused. She worked harder, smiled through the whispers, and told herself that results would speak louder than rumors. Then came the breaking point. She walked into a conference room for a scheduled client call, only to find Thomas leading it without her. He'd changed the meeting time without notifying her. When she asked about it afterward, he shrugged. It was just internal stuff. Didn't think you needed to be there. The message was clear. That night, Rosa didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table long after her granddaughter had gone to bed, staring at her notebook. For the first time since taking the role, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she didn't belong in this world of glass offices and polished shoes. Maybe they were right. She called in sick the next day and the next. On the third day, a letter arrived. Handwritten, neatly folded in a cream envelope. It was from Carlos Ramirez. "Rosa, I heard about what happened. I don't know the details, but I know your value. If you ever feel out of place there, we have room for you at Gulfstream. You changed how we see partnerships, and that means something." She read it twice, then again. Her fingers trembled. That evening, her son came home and found her sitting quietly, holding the letter. "What's wrong, Mom? I thought I could do this, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm just the cleaning lady who got lucky." He sat down beside her. "Mom, you didn't get lucky. You stepped in when no one else could. You made that moment count, and you've been earning your place every day since. If someone has a problem with that, it says more about them than you." Rosa stayed quiet, but her mind was already turning. The next day, she called HR, asked for a meeting. Then she requested one with Matthew. She walked into his office, not as the janitor turned helper, but as someone with a mission. "I need clarity, Matthew. I need to know if I'm really wanted here, or if I'm just a feel-good story you're writing until it fades." He looked stunned for a moment. "Rosa, I'm sorry. I didn't know it had gotten this bad. You are more than wanted. You're necessary. And I'm going to make that very clear, starting today." He made good on his word. In the next all-hands meeting, Matthew stood before the entire firm and addressed the tension directly. "We've all seen the incredible work Rosa has done. Some of you have embraced that. Others, not so much. Let me be clear. Rosa is not here as a token or a symbol. She's here because she's earned it, every step of the way. There was a long silence. Then someone clapped. Another followed. And soon the room echoed with applause. But Rosa wasn't clapping. She was breathing. In that moment, she let go of months, years of self-doubt. She looked around and saw faces that once ignored her now meeting her eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply stood, tall and calm, because finally she was seen not as the exception, but as part of the team. And for the first time, she believed she belonged. 3 months later, the office atmosphere had shifted. Rosa Delgado was no longer treated as a novelty. She was respected, genuinely. Her name appeared in internal memos. She was included in high-level calls, consulted on cultural strategy, and even asked to review proposals before they were sent to international partners. She had earned every bit of it, quietly, consistently. Lincoln & Foster was preparing to finalize a massive deal with a Japanese conglomerate, one that would open their services across Asia. Matthew made it clear, Rosa would not only attend the meetings, but help lead them. She spent weeks preparing. Late nights, language refreshers, cultural research. She even reached out to an old friend in California who had worked in Tokyo. She wasn't just preparing for a meeting, she was building a bridge. The day of the final negotiation, Rosa arrived early. Her navy suit fit perfectly. Her hair was pinned neatly. Her badge now read International Relations Advisor. She walked into the sleek glass conference room, nodded to the translators, and greeted the Japanese delegation with a practiced bow and a phrase in their language. The executives smiled. Some even bowed back. During the session, Rosa translated, clarified, and, more importantly, observed. She caught hesitation in one executive's expression and gently rephrased a technical term to avoid offense. When a discussion grew tense over a clause, she offered a comparison using an example from their own business model. That simple moment turned the room. Tension faded, conversation resumed, and within an hour, the deal was signed. As cameras clicked and handshakes were exchanged, Matthew turned to Rosa and handed her a pen. "You should sign too. You earned this as much as any of us." She hesitated, but then, with a deep breath, signed her name beside the others. No one flinched, no one objected. It was simply right. After the meeting, Rosa stepped outside for a moment of air. The Chicago skyline shimmered in the afternoon sun. She thought of her husband, her sons, the years she spent scrubbing these same floors without a second glance. And now here she was, on the other side of the glass. As she walked back in, she passed Angela, a janitor who had recently joined the night crew. Angela looked surprised. "Rosa? That's me." "Wow, I didn't realize you worked up here now." Rosa smiled. "I used to clean this floor. Now I help run what happens on it." Angela looked both amazed and hopeful. "How did you—" Rosa placed a hand on her shoulder. "It started with one moment, one room, one choice to speak up. You never know when that moment will come, but you better be ready when it does." In the following weeks, Rosa proposed a new initiative, an internal development program for support staff. It included mentorship, language classes, and training in business communication. To some, it seemed like a nice gesture, but to those who had felt unseen for years, it was a lifeline. By the end of the quarter, 2 cafeteria workers had applied for administrative roles. A mailroom clerk had begun shadowing in logistics. Change was slow, but it had begun. At the holiday party, Matthew took the stage and held up a plaque. "This year, we recognized someone who reminded us that talent doesn't always come in a pressed suit or a perfect resume. Sometimes it shows up with gloves on and keeps the place running before we even arrive." He turned to Rosa and handed her the plaque. It read, "For reminding us to look beyond the surface." She stood before the entire office, no longer nervous, no longer unsure. "I don't need to be the face of anything. I just want to be the proof that it's possible. If you give someone a real chance, they'll rise. Every time." Applause filled the room, not polite, not performative, real. Afterward, Matthew approached her quietly. "You changed this company." She looked at him. "I didn't change it. You just started noticing what was always here." That night, Rosa returned home to her modest apartment. Her granddaughter ran into her arms with a drawing, a picture of Rosa in a suit, holding a little globe. She hung the plaque on the wall, right next to the drawing. Above it, she pinned a sticky note that read, "Be ready. That moment will come." She sat on the couch, cup of tea in hand, the city lights flickering through the window. She didn't feel like a hero. She didn't feel like a success story. She felt seen. She felt fulfilled. And finally, she felt home. And you, listening to this, how many people around you are waiting to be seen? How many talents are walking past you every day, unnoticed? Maybe all they need is a moment. Maybe you're the one who can give it. If this story moved you, leave a comment, share it with someone, and follow our channel for more real stories that remind us greatness comes from everywhere.